My name is Matthew Feely. I'm the pastor here of the New Life Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I have deep regard for Mike Pepping. He's somebody that did a lot of work on this church, someone who transformed this church and reinforced this church and renovated this church with hours of labor and sacrifice. He's deeply appreciated in our congregation. He attended after COVID as much as possible, and he was always just a friendly individual who was very gentle, a very gentle soul, someone who just wanted to worship God. And I think that was his main priority when he came to church, is to worship his Maker, his Lord, his Savior. Even when I visited him in different hospitals during his illness, he was always upbeat. He would talk about some of his hardship, for sure, but he would also talk about writing songs and praising God. And even though I didn't know him very well, I was happy to have met him, and we were able to spend some time together during those difficult years, really. And I appreciate the family that is here today to honor him, and some of our church members are here today, and some folks are watching online. We welcome you. Today's service is a celebration of a life well lived, a life that was anchored in Christ. And no matter what difficulties or hardships he faced, I believe Mike always came back to a place of faith and trust in his Lord. And I appreciate that about him. He was a cool guy, and I really like Mike very much. We want you to know as a church that we are praying for you. This church community is praying for Mike and his family. And today, as we honor him in this funeral service, we will be following the program that you have received unannounced. We will have a scripture reading by Joan Pepping, eulogy by Sheila Buck, invitation for others to speak, homily by Pastor Frank Delurba. We will have also some final thoughts and closing remarks, which will include a reminder that immediately following this funeral service, there is a reception downstairs in our fellowship hall. So this service is being live streamed. You will be able to cherish the moments that are spent here, even beyond this hour or so. And again, please know that you're being prayed for. Please know that Mike is being celebrated and honored, and please be blessed as we offer these tributes to him.
It's a reading from the book of Psalms, 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his holy name, for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
Sorry, I gotta find mine here. Put this down a bit. I'm short. Here we go. Michael was so many things to so many people: a son, brother, father, Opa, friend, husband, and mentor, and so much more. We've heard so many wonderful stories since his passing. Those stories have sustained us through our grief. Mike left home when I was only about 9 or 10, so I don't have a lot of memories, and hearing those stories has helped me so much. Those who knew him well knew that our family life was not easy, and our family fractured and scattered years ago. Without social media, it was a lot harder to keep in touch back then, when a simple move across town meant changing your phone number, and if you lost your address book, you were in deep trouble. It was a disaster to lose your address book and your contacts. We did keep in touch sporadically over the years, some of us more than others. I know that Mike and my sister Doris kept in close touch for most of that time. A few people have told me that Michael's biggest wish was that we could all come back together and be a much closer family. Mike, we'll work on that for you. We've lost too many years already. Mike moved west shortly after he left home. While living in Calgary at 18 years old, he started painting residences and businesses. He was ambitious and started his own company at the age of 21. Eventually, Mike made his way back to Ontario and created his final business, Arts, Environmental Design and Innovation Contracting, also known as AEDI. In fact, if you look around you today, and when we're down in the reception area, Mike did a lot of work in this church over the last many years. He had visions and talent beyond what I could even imagine. So much like our father, Mike didn't want to work for anyone else and be told how to do things, but he loved learning new skills. Along the way, he met his close friend, Sean Daly, and they worked side by side for many years, sharing their knowledge with each other. Sean, you were such a wonderful friend to Mike, and we cannot thank you enough for the love you showed him and have shown all of us during this time. I honestly could not have made it through this process without you. When Mike was diagnosed with leukemia in 2023, he met it head on, like he did everything else, and he was determined to fight it. And fight he did, with every ounce of strength and resolve he had. He refused to give in to cancer and his other health issues with the same stubbornness that runs deep in our family. We are all very independent, with a very strong work ethic. My son Austin will now come up and sing a song in honor of Mike's independence and work ethic.
Hello, everyone. I was asked shortly after Mike's passing to sing this song, Frank Sinatra's My Way. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear and state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I've planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed, I've cried, I've had my fill, my share of losing, and now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way, oh no, not this. I did it my way. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way. Yes, it was my way.
Sorry, I just lost what I needed. Mike had so many passions: Indigenous studies, his faith, playing guitar, writing songs, riding his motorcycle, carving, art, windsurfing, martial arts, and so much more. Mike began studying martial arts when he was in his teens. He'd often show his skills off to us younger siblings. Once he thought he'd show my brothers how to flip someone, using his little sister as a model. Well, I landed on my head on the concrete basement floor, and of course, ended up with a concussion. If you know the symptoms of a concussion, let's just say Mike's punishment was holding the bucket for the next 2 days. I'm sure he was thrilled about that. He called me once to relate a story about his windsurfing, because he loved windsurfing. He loved being out on the lake. So I guess a couple days prior, he'd been out on, I believe it was Lake Ontario, on a very windy day, and couldn't tack back to shore and ended up way out in the middle of Lake Ontario, from which he got rescued. It was a great adventure, he thought. He was so excited that he even made the news. Me, on the other hand, I was panicking, thinking I could have just lost my brother. Why were you out there? But he loved adventure, and he loved doing things that just brought him joy, and that was one of them. And Mike loved learning new things. If he was interested in something, he studied it in depth. He didn't buy just 1 or 2 books about the subject. It was more like 10 or 15. I lost count of the books that I found while I was going through his belongings. There were boxes and boxes and boxes of books. Many of them well read, many had notes. I found tons of notebooks, things he had written that he wanted to accomplish in his life, things he wanted for himself for personal growth, things he wanted to learn. It is my deepest hope that he was able to accomplish some of those things. Many years ago, Mike started learning about Indigenous cultures and beliefs. He embraced those teachings, and years ago told me that he credited them with saving his life. He learned what family love and community was all about, and what it really meant to be a part of a family. A few years ago, the chief presented him with an eagle feather for the work and his work in the Indigenous community and his commitment to learning their teachings. This is a very high honor in the Indigenous community, and they don't hand them out willy-nilly. Early in Mike's life, he struggled with addiction until he found AA. Through AA, he found God. Through God, Mike found purpose and healing. He struggled with his faith, often not feeling worthy of God's love after the many things that he felt he had done wrong in his life. God continued to awe and inspire him at all times. As many of you know, Mike loved to play the guitar. He started learning in his teens and put in endless hours of practice. The hundreds of times I heard House of the Rising Sun and CCR's Rolling on the River drove me crazy. I'd have the pillow over my head in my bedroom next door. My bed was right against the wall. And that's all I could hear over and over. However, in more recent years, those songs always brought a smile to my face. I'd hear one of them playing on the radio, and I'd send Mike a quick message, tell him I was thinking about him, let him know I loved him, and I'd share a quick memory. Even after losing half his thumb in an unfortunate work accident, please leave your guards on your saws, people. That's what they're there for. He used a modified pick. We have one downstairs that helped him keep playing. Nothing was going to stop him from playing his beloved guitars. He loved to write funny songs about things that people said or things that happened to him. Our cousin Paula related a funny story to me while we were at Mike's house after he passed. She told me the story how she had been struggling with the fact that she had accidentally made something with dairy in it for a friend who was vegan, and she didn't know what to do about it, and that she was ethically conflicted. I laughed so hard a couple days later while I was sorting through Mike's files, and I found a song called Ethically Conflicted. Paula and I had a great chuckle about that. She had no idea he had even written the song. Paula, I'm going to ask you to start making your way up here now. Whoops. Sorry about that, folks. Mostly, however, Michael wrote beautiful Christian songs, and you'll see some of them downstairs. Paula's now going to come up and read one of his songs. Unfortunately, we didn't find any that he had put to music. It is called Gorgeous Death, about the death of Christ.
I'm going to read this, but before that, I want to share something personal. I had the honor of spending most of the last 2 years with Michael to help him navigate, his daily tasks and other things. And he would often joke at me and say, "Paula, you need to look better after yourself." And so today I'm wearing this outfit because we were at a store and they had these clothes on sale, and he goes, that would be great for you. And we had planned to perhaps go to the Netherlands this year. And because I came from the Netherlands much, much later than other families, and so my Dutch is pretty good. So he said, I want to learn, some Dutch before we go. So while we're in the store, I don't know why this came to me, but there I am, looking at the clothes, incredibly reasonable. And I'm going, yeah. And Michael goes, yeah, get them. And so out of my mouth comes this sentence that says, dat kan je niet naakt voortlopen. And I said, that'll be a great sentence to take with you to the Netherlands. And it basically means, for that kind of money, you can't be walking around in the nude. And he laughed and laughed, and he goes, that's a good one. But anyways, so this song, he shared it with me and sang it for me. And it really, I think, exhibits what Michael was all about. He read it to me a few times as we were sitting at his house. As the days went on, and he played his guitar for me, as he did the times he came up north. And he actually wrote it for a friend who also had a big belief in his God. And it is called Gorgeous Death. And it's a song, but I can't sing. Austin, I so admire singing a cappella. Never mind, I can't even really sing much. Although I do, but don't tell anybody. So, gorgeous death. Since when has there been beauty in death we see all around? Maybe in the leaves on the trees before they fall to the ground. The colors are so beautiful, they make us catch our breath. We look in awe and wonder at this gorgeous death. He came to live among us, his teachings were profound. He walked among the wretched and lost, that we may be found. His miracles were wondrous, because of his love he wept. He carried his cross to Calvary, where he died a gorgeous death. Oh, I gotta blow my nose. I see him hanging there on the cross. It is a beautiful scene. There is beauty in torn flesh, the nails in his hand and feet. There is beauty in the blood from his side and the thorns on his head. There is beauty in this amazing scene as he dies a gorgeous death. And because of his life, we have a new life. Because of his blood, we stand in God's sight. Because of his stripes, we can be healed of all pain. Because of the thorns, we have a new mind again. Because of his love, we are cleared of all sin. When we accept this, our new life begins. With God's Spirit in us, we have new breath. We only ask to die a gorgeous death. Ooh, they're sticking together. It doesn't matter how you've lived or all the wrongs you've done. It can all be forgiven through God's only Son. So give yourself into God's hands and live a new life instead. And robed in white in heaven, you'll stand because of Christ's gorgeous death. Since when has there been a beauty in death, in the death we see all around? Only in Christ Jesus can this beauty really be found. God's love for you is beyond understanding. It can't be measured width or breadth, but he showed it in his Son on cross, dying a gorgeous death. Since when has there been beauty in death we see all around? Only in Christ Jesus can this beauty really be found. I think that this song really shows what Michael believed and what gave him strength in his life. And I hope that that's what we all remember. His life, because that's what was really important, what he gave us all and what we can honor going forward. Thank you.
As I said, being young when Mike left home, I don't have a lot of funny stories to tell about Mike, because we didn't spend much time together in our youth. He was a lot older than I was. So I'm going to let others tell those stories. Our sister Joan will come up now and share some fun family memories. Hopefully we'll all get a few chuckles.
I want to thank my husband Frank for driving today, because I was able to write all the memories on all these pages. They've been going around in my mind for weeks, and I just wanted to organize them. And I got hold of all of our siblings and asked for their favorite memories. Again, like Sheila said, some people have more memories and some people have less. Welcome to our memorial for your friend, our brother, your stepdad, granddad, and more. In large families, there are many relationships that form between siblings based on their ages, their experiences, their likes and dislikes. In our family, each of us has a different perspective of Michael. I have pondered and gathered many fun memories of Michael's adventures, shenanigans, his talents, and the people that he holds dear. And again, like Sheila said, going through his pictures and his books, we really got a sense of how loved he is by his community. He kept every card that people sent him to thank him. Now, unfortunately, in the storage unit, there was a little infestation of those little critters, so we didn't think it was very healthy to share those cards today. But please know that anything that you said to Michael throughout his time with you, he remembered and held dear in his heart. There were 6 kids in our family. Doris, Michael, and I were called the big kids. Sorry, Jim and Pat and Sheila, you were the little kids. I don't know if this designation was advantageous, because we all had to participate in the multitude of chores necessary to keep our family going. So our garden was as big as the property I live on now, because you had to feed 6 kids. So we would spend the morning picking beans. We would spend the afternoon breaking the beans. We would spend the evening cooking the beans slightly, and then putting them in these milk cartons. And Mom and Dad actually had a refrigerator or freezer in the community somewhere for all the extra food that we had made for ourselves. And so those were just some of the chores. We also had goats for many years, and I know that Michael and Jim and Pat probably had to feed them all. Mom would milk them while we were at school, and we had a lot of fun with those goats. We had a goat named Daisy. She had a baby named Little Daisy. We had High Hopes. High Hopes had a disability, so she walked on her front knees, and we had a billy goat that was a little bit scary. So as we were going through his pictures, and the pictures from our families, I'm the keeper of the box of pictures. And so we have pictures of our childhood, and then I forgot to put some of them in. So we've spent many times going to Storybook Gardens with our Oma and Opa. So we have lots of those pictures with everybody lined up in all our best clothing and our shorts and everything like that. But I'm going to start and try and get everything in chronological order for you. So our parents had tuberculosis, or Mom actually also had pleurisy on her lungs, and both of them were in a sanatorium in Nova Scotia. And they were in two different ones because they had to be moved. And so Michael actually was born in the sanatorium in Kentville, Nova Scotia. And a lovely family, a good Dutch family called Tabraka, took him in, and I hope I got that right. When Mom and Dad got out, they had another child, that was me, and then all of us got all of our childhood diseases all at the same time. We moved around a lot in Nova Scotia, but Doris remembers a lot of our early years better than we do. I moved here to Ontario when I was 3, so she and Michael were actually playmates at that time. She said, first of all, he had enviable, nearly platinum blonde hair. And the girls in the family, of course, would have wanted something like that as well. Michael and Doris would play on one of the farms owned by the Swinkles. That's their last name. And they would make mud pies out of the broadleaves that they would find. And there were a couple other stories that we thought we would share with our family, but you don't need to know because they're kind of gross. But anyway, things that you do on a farm when you're a kid, make your own toys. We moved to Ontario. And Doris, when Michael was, 5, and Doris was 8, and Doris and Michael went with Dad in the truck. And he had made this platform in the back of the truck, and all of our belongings, or a lot of our belongings, were under there, and the goats were on top of that, and that's how they got to Ontario. And Jim and I followed in the train with Mom to Ontario, that's what we called it. And it was a lot of fun. We rented a house near Chelmsford, and in this house, it had a beautiful hill, and it had a river going down at the bottom. So we had lots of fun there, and we also still had the goats. But in the river, Dad would take us fishing, and the river was this high, but we would all go and have fun in that river. And then I remember us sliding down the hill on cardboard boxes. That was our toboggans at the time. It was so much fun. And one time, I just relayed that to some of the kids at school. Now they have those little plastic things that you can slide down. One time, a tornado or a big storm came and knocked a tree down on our house. So Dad took the opportunity to turn that tree trunk into the base for our picnic table. He also made lots of toys for us, and he made a train for, I think, probably Jim or Pat. Anyway, we used that later on. We flipped it over the cart part of it, and we used that to stand on to reach the counter in our other house. Then, after a while, we had an adventure of moving to a schoolhouse. So we've been in school almost all our lives. Some of them all your lives. Sheila went in my doll carriage, sitting there, when we were moving. That's where we had the enormous garden, and Doris remembers sitting on the front steps where we sat to peel potatoes and shell those peas and break those beans and do all of the hard work. We also went tobogganing in the gravel pit nearby, or on the big hill way down at the end of our road, and that was a lot of fun too. And then skating on the pond. So all of those pictures that you see in the magazines, we lived those pictures. There was a pond, and all the neighborhood kids would go. Now, the boys got to play hockey at the one end, and the girls got to skate in the weedy part. Just saying. But the other thing we did, we lived at the top of a hill, and we were able to ride our bikes everywhere, and we would go into the creeks and swim with the cow patties floating by. We would catch fish in the creeks. We just had a lot of fun doing all of those things. Basically, we were kicked out of the house in the morning and come back for lunch and supper. Jim and Mike had to feed one of our mama dogs, and everyone was afraid of this dog, but it was their job to feed that dog. While we were there, we started going to school at St. Joseph's School. We kept our school from both houses. We were all bused there, and it was in Chelmsford, Ontario. Each room had about 2 or 3 grades in it. We didn't have a gym. So for phys ed, we pushed all the desks back to the edge of the room, and we did square dancing. That was our phys ed. So Michael, and Doris was remembering earlier today that she was a caller, but Michael was also a caller of all of the square dances that we have. So I actually brought a square dance record. I used to scrounge them from the schools when they were throwing them out. And so I would find them. We actually competed at the London Western Fair, and Doris said Mom made the skirts for everyone, and that they did quite well doing all this square dancing. In grade 7, when Michael was in grade 7, we changed to Leesboro Public School, which was down the road from us, by the way, so we then could ride our bikes to school, uphill both ways, of course, you know, in the winter in the snow. We had a lot of stories about our teachers there, but Mike was in grade 7, so he only had 2 years. But he had a teacher named Mr. Saltz who played guitar. So I don't know if Mr. Saltz actually inspired Michael, but he was a great teacher where we would all sing in the classroom. One of the other things that we had when we lived at schoolhouse, we had swimming lessons. And so we got to drive our bikes 5 miles to the town where we got the bus to take us to Ingersoll at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're standing there, and Paula, I remember you, and we had to do the CPR exercises. So that was every year, because our parents were Dutch, and it was mandatory that you learn how to swim. And then my brothers also played baseball there. One of the fun things that we did was the fair in Thamesford, and Dad always had these funky ideas. So he would actually make floats and do different things for us. So we had one float that was a big wooden log with the head of a horse on it, and the 4 oldest kids actually sat on this horse and went through the parade on this horse. And we still had it for many, many years, and it was a lot of fun. We played on that for a long time. The other fair that we have pictures of is we had the Scotia Dairy Goat Farm, that's what Dad called it. And because we had lived in Nova Scotia, Michael was wearing the Nova Scotia tartan with a little coat, and he's sitting in the cart and the billy goat is pulling him. He actually made the newspaper that time too. He's pretty famous throughout his life. You guys even brought up a picture of him in the newspaper. So that was great. One of the things that we did a lot was we visited all the Dutch people for coffee and gebakjes, which is cookies and things like that. They would come to our house and speak Dutch, and we would go to their house. But one of the main families was the Meyer family, and I forgot to ask Doris what the dad's name was. Kat and Dick, right? Dick Meyer. And John was the same age as Michael, so they would always play together, and they still kept in touch over the years. And we also went to Storybook. I already told you about Storybook Garden with Oma and Opa, but it was in London, Ontario. There's a little, it's quite big, but it was all of the stories that kids would want. And you would go through this whole park and just play and go, the wooden shoe, the woman who had too many kids and she lived in a shoe, we'd slide down the slide, things like that. One of the memories I have also is that we had 6 kids. You need a big car when you have 6 kids. So every 2 years, we would get a secondhand car from the insurance broker, and it was a station wagon, always a station wagon, but Michael and Jim, or maybe Pat too, would have to sit in the back where there's no seats, right? There were no seat belts back then, and we had long trips in that car. We often went to the airport when Oma and Opa came, and so they would be in there for quite a long time. During the teen years, Doris and Michael sang in the folk choir at St. Andrew the Apostle Church in London. And we have some of the records downstairs so we can, and Mom's record player, so we could even play them if we want. In high school, we went to Lord Dorchester Secondary School, and I always say we got our friends back because the kids from the Catholic school and the kids from the public school all went to the same high school. So it was fun getting back with the friends that we had made. I looked at Michael's transcripts, and he had taken many courses in really handy things like wood shop and electricity and all those hands-on kind of learning. And I think that stood him in good stead for the rest of his life. This was when his life became more turbulent, and he just had access to things that we didn't have on the farm, and it was very difficult for him at that time. He left high school after grade 10. and he moved out west, and he found new supports and new people there. Eventually, our brother Jim also moved out west, and Michael supported him and helped him through a tough time as well. I asked Jim for lots of adventures, but he only had a few. And one of them was that they were going down the river together, and then it became very dark, and they wanted to get back to where they were. And so, but they could only go up the bank of the river. And the plants that were along the bank of the river were called Devil's Club, and they had thorns on them, and if they touched you, you would get blisters and suffer. So he said they both stopped, and they prayed, and they said, God, please don't let us get sick from these plants, and it actually worked. So they were able to survive that little adventure together. There were lots of other adventures that I'm sure we have no idea of, but we can only imagine. So then Michael returned to Ontario, like Sheila said, and he started his new business, and he found new supports. And we found the Indigenous world for him, and that worked really well. He had a bunch of matrimonial adventures, and he became stepdad to Corey and Sarah. And you have other siblings too, right? And I remember visiting them in Brampton, so that was really nice to see that he had the family around him that he always wanted. Again, back to the windsurfing story. Port Dover, not on a Friday the 13th, but one time I went to visit Michael when he lived in Waterford, and he took me windsurfing in Port Dover. And I was in the shallow area trying to get up on the windsurfer. Oh, and we had bodysuits too, right? Because the water's pretty cold. And he's out there having a glorious time. And I'm trying to get up on the board, and anyone who knows me, it's called the klutzoid factor. And it took all day, and I finally was able to get it to go about 100 meters. But he forgot to tell me about when the whole board falls over to not let the boom fall on your head. So that was another almost concussion story. But we had so much fun that day, and it was a really good time for him as well. He also took up rollerblading, and that was one thing that he did quite a lot. And his carvings are downstairs for you. Some of his carvings are there for you to admire. So he would make these walking sticks, and he would have a creature at the top. But please take time to look at his medicine stick that he made. It is a fabulous work of art, and it has all of the different animals on it, and it's just an incredible piece of carving that he did. When Mike reconnected with his family here, we were able to visit sporadically in the different places that he lived. Doris and Michael had a stronger relationship. They were close together. And in his later years, he told Doris that she had been his protector when we were living at home. When she left home at 16, or no, 18, I think, somewhere around there, he was very vulnerable to the things that were happening in our home. But Doris admired that he participated in therapy for survivors of alcoholic parents because it helped him recover. And you got the best of Michael. You got the parts that he wanted to share with people. So I'm so glad that he found this community. Cousin Paula, he loved visiting you, and he loved the nature of your place. And he loved going on his motorbike up there. Anything fast with wind, I think Michael liked. And we want to thank you for living with Michael during his treatments and taking care of him. And I want to remind you to go to Quebec Street and look at your daffodils. I remembered those on the way here today. Family was really important to Michael. He was very protective of the people around him, and he chose his love very carefully. He became a father to Corey, and he became a grandfather to Em, and he loves you both dearly. I was so happy to be able to meet you during this last while, because I had seen some of your siblings when everyone was very small or when Sarah was a teenager, so it's nice to see you growing up. You already talked about his journals on his healing growth, yes. So in closing, about Michael, and I'm saving the best funny thing for last after this one. With Michael, what you saw in public is what you saw at home. So he was a genuine person. He was able to work through his sorrow and his trauma, and he explored many ideas, and he strove to be perfect in life. All right, now, my favorite memory of Michael. Every family has their sayings. My favorite saying comes from Michael, and my husband and I steal sayings from all of our friends. One day, he was trying to explain something to Mom or Dad. It was something that he had seen or done or made, and he was getting so frustrated with nobody understanding what he was talking about. Finally, he said, "You know, the thingy and the cross thingy." So there you go. We say this all the time in our family. If you ever need a good, uplifting thought, you can sing one of his songs, or you can take an adventure to look for the thingy and the thingy with the cross thingy. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask anyone else who'd like to come up and say a few words. Please come up now and share some thoughts. If you're not comfortable coming up, please share them downstairs at the reception. Mike would love nothing more than to see us all laughing and joking and carrying on and sharing our love for him and our funny stories, because I'm sure a lot of you out there have stories we've never heard yet. If anyone would like to come up, you can come up now. Otherwise, we will go on to, oh, yes, please.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Brad Coloma, a member here at church. With everything that happened with COVID and stuff, a lot of us got disconnected from our church families and stuff. And driving around a couple times, Mike and I ran into each other. I think Canadian Tire, and one time down by the grocery store in Wentworth and stuff. And we stopped in the car, just kind of spaced out, and chatted for a few minutes and stuff. But he was in in the praise team here as well. He was in our praise team. He played guitar for me. I played drums. We had keyboard. We have keyboard. We have drums, as you can see. And Mike was always willing to learn a new song on his guitar and everything. He was always, a really good friend. Always good for a great hug. Beginning, "Hey, Brad, how's it going? Good morning." And then when it's time to leave, always give us a good hug and stuff. He was a very loving man, very loving individual. We miss him. And I do remember a time that we had a Father's Day event here when my son here, he was just a baby. And so him and Christine, remember that? You guys, they organized a really nice Father's Day thing downstairs and everything, and he got us to dress up like chefs, and we were preparing the food for all the fathers in the area here. So that would have been, when was it? My son's 11, so it would have been about 10 years ago. And he just had a love for the church and for everything that we did here and everything. So I just wanted to pass that on, how great it was for him to be a great member here and a great friend. And he'll be sorely missed, Christine and families. And thank you for your song. I was listening to the words, Love Sinatra, and those words were on point with the way that Mike lived his life, and I'm sure, faced his situation head on. So thank you very much.
I think Mike would appreciate me saying praise the Lord, everybody. Amen. My name is Daniel. Mike was... Okay, I'll get through this. I remember when he started writing that song, Gorgeous Death. I remember when he came excited, he said, listen, listen. And I'd put up with it, because Mike can talk, right? Anyways, it's a beautiful song, but what Mike taught me was that I remember we're downstairs, they were putting the bathrooms in downstairs. I've told this story before, but we were putting the bathrooms in downstairs. Or before that, I saw him working behind the door. We had the food bank in the back, or downstairs, so the door was shut because he was building that's down there now. It was just a big open room. You know better than I do. But he was, and I stuck my head in the door and I said, hey, you looking for someone to work? I said, I don't know much, but I'm a good grunt. I know how to carry things. I know how to do things. He took me for real on that point, because he said, we got to put a sewer in, we got to put some bathrooms in downstairs. So he bought a jackhammer, and he got working a jackhammer. I hate jackhammers, all right? But my job was the grunt, and he took that serious. So I carried 2 tons of cement out of the basement that we broke up. 3 floors of cement, 3 layers of cement. And then he got into the drywall, and he doesn't stop. But Michael was so patient and so, and we can both talk, him and I can both talk, but he was so patient because I'm useless when it comes to tape measures and construction and stuff like that. I'm a grunt. I do the labor, right? So he was trying to get me to measure things, but I always cut short. Or I'd cut it long, or I couldn't figure it out. So he bought me a tape measure, and he put numbers on all of it. So all the numbers were there. So I didn't have to think past looking at a number from 16ths and 12ths and 8ths and all that stuff like that. And I still couldn't get it right. So I just wanted to tell you that Mike was an incredible man of God. And the greatest thing about a man of God is he's real in his struggle. And he never wasn't not real with me. And he worked me hard. And but it was well worth the effort. I couldn't deal with him dying.
Really? Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Yeah, listening to what they're saying about the Father's Day thing and everything, there were about 3 years that I came up with this idea to do a surprise Mother's Day event. The second time I did it, it wasn't so much of a surprise, but there was a lot of work involved and of course Michael got to do part of that. He was, quite talented, and so he made a room within a room, it was like a real restaurant, and we called it Cafe Chardonnay. We decorated it and had tables, and I made flower arrangements, and there was a menu and a tipping etiquette and all that type of thing. We had the starving artist and in front of the Eiffel Tower, and the whole deal, that type of thing. So besides, having to go to work, he had to create these walls and things like that, help me to accomplish this. And I think some of the men might remember you know, doing this because they were involved. They were like waiters and the chef and, you know, things like that. And it was a good time. And then, of course, the Father's Day thing was kind of like a day at the ballpark. And some of us, the women, we sang that song, Take Me Out to the Ball Game, you know, and we played that video, Who's on First? And we had kind of like a little bit of a ball diamond in the center of the tables and played a little bit of a baseball game and things like that. And he was involved in doing, you know, a lot of the things for that, the ticket booths and stuff like that. So it was a fun time. He had a lot of talents. And when I met him, it's like I visited him in Brantford, and he showed me how to fill nail holes, you know, and man, there were a lot of them. You know, some of those people that put on trim, they used a lot of nails. And I'm sure that he was glad that he didn't have to do those nail holes. You know, they could just get right to the job of painting. But, you know, I used to feel intimidated, you know, about painting and things like that. But he taught me, you know, how to do those things. And eventually, you know, I could paint a room pretty fast and do a decent job. So I didn't feel so intimidated about that anymore. But, you know, he told me stories. And this one story he told me about when he lived on the streets in London, you know, and so the story that he told me is about, he hadn't eaten in about a week, and this young man and his wife, I guess they were Christian, they took him into their home and they fed him and gave him clean clothes and a few dollars, and they didn't, you know, say anything to him, really, didn't try to preach or anything like that. So I wrote this poem about his life that he really liked, and so I just kind of want to read it. It's called The God Who Wore Open-Toed Shoes. And so it's like, this is the story of a homeless man, dirty clothes, going hungry, worn-out shoes, walking the streets looking for a place to sleep, hiding his fears, nothing left to lose. A man came along and said, "Come home with me. I'll let you rest and give you something to eat." He gave me a bed, clean clothes, and a meal, and never preached this man was real. I've never forgotten what this man did for me. He showed me the truth, a new reality. What no sermon or book or prayer could have done, he did with his deeds that day. That man was a Christian. I had no use for that kind. There was something he had, though, I was later to find. God who healed people gave them hope and a dream, a man named Jesus who said, "Your life I'll redeem." This man gave his life, now I'm giving mine too, showing others the way and telling the truth about a homeless God wearing open-toed shoes. And so, you know, and I know that when he lived, you know, out in British Columbia, he did get involved with the Pentecostal church, and even, you know, he found out about the Sabbath through his own studies, and I guess they didn't appreciate that too much. You know, he got some flack over that, and he told me about a time when he'd lost 2 jobs that he had in British Columbia, and he had a car, and he was bringing people to Bible studies and prayer meetings, and he had run out of gas, and I guess the car that he had, whenever the car, you know, ran out of gas or whatever, because I guess it must have a few times, he probably had to walk to the gas station for some gas or whatever, but the fuel pump made this horrible racket, and he was driving people to, I guess, a prayer meeting or prayer study one night, and they were asking him, "What's that terrible noise?" They said, "Oh, that's the fuel pump." And he said, "Why is it making that noise?" And he said, "Well, because there's no gas in the car." He drove around for a whole week with no gas in the car. Like, you know, you talk about Michael, he has had some miracles. I have too, you know, in my life. So it's like, you know, and that's really, you know, inspiring. That being Dutch too, it's like I know he liked flowers. He often said he didn't like gardening because of, his growing up years and whatever. And he liked tiny flowers, like forget-me-nots and things like that. And I like them too. I mean, I love roses, but I also like daisies. And there's a story about the daisies. One day he went to Tim Hortons, and he saw this daisy growing up through the cement, and kind of marveled at, you know, how a flower could do that, push up through cement and grow. So he brought this daisy home to me, gave me this daisy, and then he started singing that song, "I'll give you a daisy a day." You know, and for me, like, I guess in the beginning our love was like roses, and then it became like daisies, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, you know, the mundane things of life, you know, you go through stuff, you go through your ups or downs and things like that, and you know, as kids, we always, of course, pulled those petals, you know, that type of thing on the daisies. He loves me, loves me not, you know, and you go through those days and things like that and whatever, you know, and, you know, so, I mean, we both had our challenges and our struggles and things like that. But, yeah, I loved him. You know, and it was hard to see him suffer like he did. You know, because he was always a very energetic person. I mean, the whole funny thing about that is that when we met, I had fibromyalgia, and I was really in a lot of pain and sore, that type of thing. And we met at an AA Al-Anon fundraiser, and we went downstairs. I went downstairs to get away from the smoking and whatever, because at that time you could smoke indoors, right? I went down the stairs, and he came downstairs and to have a cup of tea, and we talked and sat across the table from each other, and I'm thinking, well, you know, he's a nice enough man, but I never want to go out with anyone like him. He's just got too much energy, and I'm just, you know. And then he's thinking, well, you know, she's a nice enough lady, but, you know, it's like, I need somebody that can keep up with me. And that was in April, around the time of his birthday. And by September, we were going out together. And he used to tell people, because we went to a great big AA Al-Anon conference, and I like asking questions. I'm just a very curious person, you know, that type of thing. And so I was asking him questions, as I do with a lot of people. And he told people, oh, I was interviewing him for a relationship. And I'm like, what? No. And then I remember we visited a friend out on the lake the long weekends in September. And he got to give me a ride there, and he got to give me a ride home. And he told me that, I was told later that on the way home he called his mom and told her, I found the woman I'm going to marry. And I mean, no clue. I had no inclination or just anything like that. So he could be very, I don't know, he's impulsive at times and things. But yeah, we had our challenges. Everybody does. But he did a lot of good things. I got to work with him a little bit on the church here, and work with him when he was painting and things like that. And I mean, there were times when he thought he should advertise the business, and I was saying, no, you don't need to advertise. I says, you know, your work is your advertisement, because, you know, a lot of his work he got from word of mouth, right? That type of thing. And he used to say to me, it's like, when he was living in Brantford, it's like, you know, that when he needed a job, it's like he trusted God for, you know, that the phone would ring and a job would come, and that's the way it was, you know, that type of thing. So, yeah, I was hoping, I really was hoping that, you know, that he could make it through, and that there were conversations that we could have that we didn't have, because he did mention 3 times during this 2 years or whatever about us, you know, talking about, and what, you know, maybe getting back together and stuff like that. And I knew that, you know, we needed some things that we need to talk about and see maybe, that type of thing. But God doesn't make mistakes. And I mean, if he allowed this in Michael's life, it was for a reason. And the one thing I hang on to in the Bible, is it says that God has a plan for everyone's life, a good plan. And sometimes that's hard to see, and we don't understand. But we don't need to understand really. So we just need to know that God is a God of love, and He loves us, and He cares for us, and that all things work together for good to those that love the Lord. And so, it's, yeah, I've got lots of stories, but I just thought I would share this with you.
Is there anybody else that would like to come up and speak?
Don't be afraid, I'm not long-winded. As a member of this church, I just wanted to say that it has been heartwarming to hear the stories, because we come to church and sometimes we don't know what's going on behind a person's life. We just know their name and, hi, how you doing, happy Sabbath, that kind of thing. But it's been heartwarming to hear those stories about Mike. All I know about him is that he would sit in the front here. He's a deeply spiritual man, and he was deeply touched by things. I mean, he would shed tears at a drop of a hat, and we appreciate a lot the music that he played and the work that he did on this church you've heard about. And so I just wanted to add my thanks to the family who has given him to us, and for the work that he did on this church, and for the contribution he made, and for the man he was. Thank you so much.
My name is Tony Martin. I've worked with Mike for many years. I managed the food bank for about 15 years downstairs under the leadership of Ann Thompson. And Mike worked with me a lot. He was always available upon a phone call. We did a lot together. To Eimer's point, Mike was a quite emotional guy, and I realized that with his emotions, there was pain somewhere there. But he loved unconditionally. Mike wore, many times, a white shirt and jeans. And I don't know who ironed his shirt for him, but it was well tailored. And when Mike walked in here, he sat right there, and I always admired him in that white shirt and jeans with a long ponytail. We also did work off-site. Mike did my basement for me with the mudding. If you see how Mike does mudding, it's exceptional. I had 3 guys, I interviewed 3 guys, and in the end I chose Mike. And to this day, there's not a nail being popped out of my walls. Mike did an awesome job. Throughout the years, we maintained our friendship, and he called me and said that he was at St. Margaret's. I went and I saw Mike, and I've never seen Mike without hair. So of course I was quite taken aback when I saw Mike had been bald. But even with that, with all the pain, everything that was happening right there, Mike held his faith so strong. If he was in pain, he didn't show it. I started to cry. Mike cheered me up. Okay, that's who Mike was. Mike was just somebody that just held his faith. When he came out, he called me, and we were supposed to do coffee. But I kept denying the coffee run only because I thought that to get him in public would compromise his immune system. So I kept avoiding that, and I kept saying, eventually we will. But we'll still talk, and then I kind of dropped the ball. And then on February 24th, I woke up and I said, I need to call Mike now. And when I called Mike, Sheila answered the phone. And I just sat on the step because I knew right there that something had gone wrong. And she said, Mike had just passed. But family, Mike was a decent man. He was a good man. He loved, like I said, unconditionally, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm not too good at this kind of thing.
That's why I dragged him up here.
I'm actually pretty nervous about speaking in front of a bunch of people. I was Mike's, he was my stepdad, but he was more than that. Yeah, he was more than that. He was a friend, and I mean, he always seemed to have the right thing to say. I mean, he got a lot more years on me, so he's got wisdom there. But I don't really know what to say other than I loved him. I loved him so much. Gonna miss him. So many memories. And I wish I could be strong enough to just bring some of those up for you people. Like we've been canoeing, just playing guitar. He was always there for me. And I've had my troubles through the years with addiction, with all sorts of problems. And Mike, he never, ever once held anything against. He was just there, and he was just giving me his love and so much knowledge of so many things. I helped him with the church here, done the drywalling, all the bathroom stuff down there. I was in on it. He got me to help him with it. He was a really good father figure to me, and I'm gonna miss him a lot. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Mm-hmm. My turn now. Do I get a turn? Everybody gets a turn? I like this. Well, I would like to share maybe perhaps something quite silly that we used to do. We used to make fun of family members for the heck of it. Not in a hurtful way, of course. He and I were always goofy, two peas in a pod, right? And one of the jokes, the running jokes that we had for years was getting the gist of it. And this all started with my mom. We were talking about, I can't remember what we were talking about, but she says, you get the gist of it. And so, of course, Mike and I, being the crazy, silly people we are, oh, yeah, the gist of it. So it ran from a series of, you don't actually need to eat. You can just run the food by and get the gist of it. And it, pulling things like, you don't need to read the book. You can just look at the back and you'll get the gist of it. You can throw the book at you, you'll get the gist of it. And even like my mother, she's really good at the budget. She knows how to stretch a dollar bill until it screams in agony. And so we'd be like, well, you don't actually have to give her the money. You can just wave it under her nose and she'll get the gist of it. Silly things like that. Made it fun, make the memories, very good ones. He cared about me and was there for me at a time when I needed a father figure. It was very important, because I was very protective of my mom when they first met. And he came to the door to give a card to my mom. She wasn't home. And I opened the door he knocks on the door. I opened the door about a smidge, Yeah. Knock, knock, Is your mom home? No. Can you give this to her? Yeah, slam. And it came to, that came to, today where, he was a great father figure at that time for me, a struggling young girl needing someone to look up to, And then, of course, my children, couldn't be here, of course, but my youngest, I remember when we came to visit 7 years ago, he was not quite 2. And Opa would come home from work, and Joshua would be waiting. And he'd open the door, and his little legs could not carry him fast enough to his Opa's arms. And that's the memory I'd like to have to keep close to my heart, because he did love quite a lot. Thank you.
Is there anybody?
Thank you, everyone. I see we all know the same Michael, just a wonderful soul. I met Michael when he was sitting right there. I was left out of the church world from I was 19 when I became pregnant in a Seventh-day Adventist church the same time my mom was pregnant. And so I never wanted to walk back in a Seventh-day Adventist church ever. And then one Thursday I was in a laundromat not far from here, washing my laundry and singing How Great Thou Art. And a lady from this church asked me if I go to church, and I told her no. And she asked me why, and then I explained like what I just said to you. And she says, well, I know about New Life. You can come to New Life. And they're not like that. And so I came to this church one day. God is always in the details. The Friday after that Thursday, my daughter graduated and was given 12 long stem roses. My daughter despises roses. And I brought them home because I liked roses. I woke up the Sabbath morning like I usually do before the children to get ready, because we would always, my son is here, church was at home, we'd always worship there on Sabbath. And so I had woke up the Sabbath morning and the house smelled like so many roses, and I was like, oh no, the girls are gonna be so mad. They didn't want roses here. So I remember that lady the day before, on the Thursday, who told me about this church. So I came here with one intention: meet this lady or whoever at the door and just give away the roses. Michael was coming up the stairs, and I gave the roses to the lady at the front, and I was gonna leave, and he told me to come in, and I didn't wanna come in, but then I came in and stayed here. And he was right, this church is different, and it's welcoming, and he was the first entrance to this place, and he welcomed me, and he introduced me to all that he knew here, including his wife, who he knew that we would connect because I'm vegetarian, and he wanted you to teach me how to eat better and healthier. And so right away, there's that nourishing, caring individual. He introduced me to 3 lovely gentlemen there at the back, and Pastor Frank. And Daniel, we met later on because I ended up staying here and I ended up meeting another friend who came earlier and spoke. So Daniel was also somebody who connected me to other people, because before that I was only connected to my children. And he became a friend from then and until February 23rd was the last time, February 23rd was the last time I saw him. And he was a friend, but not just a friend. He took me like, I feel like family. He would talk to me all the time. He helped my family and I even move to where we live now. And he like adopted my grandson in a sense. We would go out and we would just play or eat. And he was always there for my grandson. He would pray over my children. He would pray for me and say, you know, he wishes to see this better life for me. And he was always praying and hoping that, you know, he would see all the people that he cares about just doing well. And the song, Gorgeous Death, I'm so thankful that you were able to read those words, because that gave him such joy and such hope. He didn't know what it was going to go, where it was going to do with it. And it ended up being because he lived a gorgeous life. And it's about him and his love for God and that relationship. God was using that to walk him through, to get him until he can see him face to face. And I fully believe that that he will have that day, that he has that moment. And so I think it's even fitting to see how he's represented here in so many ways, because yeah, he was a perfectionist and everything he did well. And so I'm just so thankful to have this opportunity to meet all of you guys, his family, and to say that the Michael we all knew was precious. He's so cherished. I literally feel totally and completely empty, because since I'm 19 years old, I've never had anyone who called me family and took me as a family outside of my children. And so he's like a brother, an uncle, a friend, a cousin, and everything to me. And I thank you guys for sharing him with me. God bless you all, and thank God that he blessed Michael.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come up to speak? If not, I will turn this over to Pastor Frank right now. He'll be doing the homily, and we'll be singing and a benediction after that.
Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. What a privilege it is to be a part of this celebration of life. Yeah, I knew Mike. He was my friend. We called each other brother. But hearing everyone's stories, and it just completed it. It helped me get a picture of him that I had an inkling of, but now I got a better picture. And, you know, grief is just, it's just love. It's just love expressed through loss. And it's okay to grieve. We grieve someone that was a treasure, who was a blessing to so many, to me personally. And so I'm so privileged that I can share a little bit myself about Mike for just a few moments. I want to share 3 things that he touched my life with, and then connect that to the God he loves so much. The first thing I was thinking about when it came to Mike that impacted me so much was his extroverted personality. Mike was the first contact, Empress, you were saying. He was one of my first contacts when I was first here as a pastor. He just embraced people, loved people, connected with people so easily. And he did that with me. One of the ways I most admired that ability to connect was especially with down and out people, people that were hurting, people that were struggling. This church has always been a blessing to the community. It reaches out to vulnerable people, and he was the first to be there, to be able to spend time with them, talk with them. You know, a lot of people that are going through these tough times are homeless, whatever they're struggling with. They just need someone to listen, and he was able to do that. He was able to converse and give them time. And I know, Christine, you were part of that partnership with him in blessing people that were, you know, hurting. And so that is something that's just meant a lot to me. And I think about Mike that he shared how he, when he was younger, actually was on the streets for some time. He went through some rough times. And I admired him how he was able to take the blessing and the healing that God gave into his life, and then he extended it to other people. He received and then he gave. And it made me think of a verse in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 and 4. It says this: "All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us." As we receive help, as we get the things we need through our challenges, then we are able to pass it on. And Mike was just a perfect example of that for me. He did it for me personally, supporting me through my own journey as a pastor at this church. And I hope that as we remember Mike today, like him, we can pass on the blessings of comfort and strength that he gave us, that God gives us, that others have given us, pass it on to others as well. The second thing that makes such a difference to me has been mentioned already quite a bit, and it's his gifted hands. Mike was so gifted. Tony, I too have a basement that when I lived here, that is just an awesome work of art. I mean, if you ever done any mudding and taping and sanding, it's rough work. Mike did that for my basement, and then he painted it, and it was just like silk. It was just an amazing job. And I know you guys were like partners in crime when it came to just transforming something that wasn't so beautiful or wasn't even existing into something wonderful and that lasts. You know, Mike, I think, communicated well with his mouth, but I think he communicated just as well with his hands in what he created. And you can see it around you here. Go downstairs and see what he created. The addition that was made in the basement, all the rooms that were there that are enjoyed to this day. You know, he was the contractor that made that happen. And I think that he's left a legacy in the GTA. He once told me that AEDI, you know what you told me the acronym, but it's idea backwards. And that was him. He visualized when he saw something, he said, I could see what this could be. And he had this power and this enthusiasm and energy to transform it. And we have his legacy to this day, his hands. But it's not just with contracting. He was gifted with carving and art and so on. When I came to visit you, Christine, and Mike, I saw those carved wood walking sticks, and I hear they're downstairs, so we can have a look at them afterwards. But just beautiful, just beautiful. He strikes me as the kind of guy that would just say, I'd be interested to try that, and then he does it. Some of us would be like, okay, I got to go to the University of YouTube first and find out how I do it. He just threw himself into stuff, and he made beautiful things happen. Just amazing. And the other thing I thought about was the music, of course. The music, like, he loved playing guitar, and he just expressed such beautiful things through the music, not just with his hands to play it, but actually create songs. You talked about Gorgeous Death. I remember another one, Praise Him Now. That song was in my head, He did it. He just tried it and made it happen, and people were blessed by it. That's Mike. And of course, when I was here worshiping, where were Mike's hands during worship? They were either playing guitar or he was up there and he was just praising God and expressing it, and sometimes there was tears in his eyes. He just let it out. And I so admired him for that. And Mike's gifted hands made me think of course, God's hands, how he crafted each one of us to be a work of art, to be a blessing to people around us. I think of the verse Isaiah 64, verse 8, "You are our Father, Lord, we are the clay. You are the potter, we are the work of your hand." And so Mike was God's handiwork. I think we can attest to that today. And another verse that talks about God's hands is the way he blesses people, blessings that we often take for granted. Psalm 104, verse 28, "When you open up your hand, Lord, they are satisfied with good things." Mike received blessings, and even though he had a rough life, he's been through a lot. It's one of the reasons why he was so good at blessing other people going through rough times too. He would share those stories about how God took care of him, how took care of you, Christine, the adventures you had together in faith. And Mike's hands made me think about how God's hand also comforts us. Isaiah 41, verse 10, "Don't be afraid, I am with you. Don't be discouraged, I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you, and I will hold you up with my righteous right hand." These are the things that I thought about when I thought of Mike's hands. God's hand helps us in our time of grief. And this time of sharing for me was a healing one. And it was a blessing to hear all these things about Mike. And Mike's hands for me points to the bigger hands that have taken care of Mike all his life, brought him through some of those rough patches in life, those challenges, to this very moment when I can celebrate him and still be affected by his life to this day. And in spite of our grief, we are in God's hands. And the last thing that I thought about when it came to Mike, well, it's been talked about as well, but Mike's love for God. Mike's love for God. Wow. I saw it all the time. He served this church in so many ways. He maintained the church and repaired things and fixed things. This is an old church, and Mike always had work to do, but he did it, and he made it happen and made things get fixed. And he volunteered at the food bank, and he was a musician, as we were saying, and he even served as an elder, as one of the spiritual leaders of the church. And he had, for me, what really got me was he had a special love for prayer. Mike just had this way about prayer that just touched my life. See, the way I grew up in church, you don't express much. My background's Italian, some of you are saying Dutch. I think we have some similar things. You just sit quietly in church, and that's what you do. Mike changed things. He gave me a different perspective. We were often right in that room over there. We were praying. And when Mike prayed, it wasn't like hands folded, eyes closed, and that's it. He would get up, and he would walk around with his hands up, and he would be crying out to God. And sometimes there was being joy, and sometimes there were tears, and he would express. And it unlocked my own, in a world of religion where we can kind of get into the routine of things, he made me see a God we can encounter and be with and express to and receive from him. That was Mike. That was his legacy. Amazing. And so often Mike and another friend, they would be in that same room, and he would do, I don't know if you know that story in the, I think it's in the book of Exodus, where they were holding up Moses' hands during that battle. One guy was holding up one side, one guy was holding up the other side, and Mike would be one of those that would be holding up my hands literally and praying for me. as I pastored at this church. Just incredible memories. And I want to say this is about Mike as well, and it was mentioned. As much as Mike loved people and helped people, he was also honest. He could talk about his own pain, his own struggles. He was real. What you see is what you get when it came to Mike, you know? And he wasn't afraid to reach out for prayer himself when he needed it. You know, when I was connecting with him during his difficult journey with leukemia and visited him in the hospital as well, and we talked together, and he would be the one, he had this optimism, right? He had this faith. But there was one time I remember last year where he called me and he was in distress, you know? He was thinking about what might be, you know, what happens if the procedure doesn't work and so on. And he was hurting and he was struggling. He was able to share that with me, and it was my privilege to hold his hand up in prayer as I journeyed with him through that difficult time. You know, Mike loved God. Mike loved God, and he showed it in so many different ways. But I can also say this, boy, God loved Mike. God loved Mike. Some people have a hard time believing in God's love. Maybe they see themselves so negatively, they can't believe that God could possibly love them. And maybe Mike had that sometimes too. But I found that Mike, I knew, he was able to just absorb God's love like a sponge. It was something that he knew how much he needed God, and he would welcome God with open arms, trusting in his Father. One of his favorite stories that he would tell us was when he was, a time he was rollerblading in London. And during that, he was out in nature, he loved nature, and he just suddenly had an encounter with God where he experienced the love of God so strongly that he told me this very clearly a number of times. He said, "Frank, I thought I was going to die. I felt so much love from God that I didn't even know if I would survive the encounter." And he would relate that story so many times. It was a pivotal thing in his life. And because of that love, you know, 1 John 4:19 says, "We love each other because God loved us first." That love that we've all been touched by and experienced, I think someone put it as, we got the best of Mike later in life. You know, it was that transformation that he had, and he spread it to others. It was an amazing thing. For Mike, God's love wasn't just a fun fact that you read in the Bible. It was an experience. It was real. And he shared that with other people. And he wanted that for others to have too. When I got the news that day that he had suddenly passed, all I knew about Mike was he was a man, even with leukemia, he was physically strong. He was emotionally strong. He was spiritually strong. He can overcome so many things. And yeah, the leukemia knocked him down a bit, but boy, he had this hope and strength. And so to know that he wasn't with us anymore, it was a blow. It was a blow, a heavy one. But it was that same love of God that him and I so often shared about and talked about, that it gave me the peace to know that Mike is forever safe. And knowing how he talked with such love for every one of you that's here celebrating his life, I think he would want us all to have that same experience that he had, to know God for yourself, to know his love, to know that hope. Romans 8, this beautiful text says this: "I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Neither death," first thing that's mentioned, "neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus our Lord." That is what Mike believed. That is what he lived out. That's the hope that he always carried with him, that not even death could separate him or us from the love of God. So as we grieve, let's remember Mike's life of compassion for others, and let's make a difference for someone who needs it. Let's remember his gifted hands and create something beautiful that lasts. Let's remember his love for God, that love is stronger than death, that promises that this memorial service, this celebration of life, is not the end of Mike's story. There is more to live, more to love, I am grateful for Mike's life. I'm grateful for the difference that he has made in my life and in each one of you here today. Thank you for this privilege of sharing about my friend Mike. And now I want to invite the people to come forward that are going to lead us in that beautiful hymn of hope, Amazing Grace. Thank you.
While we're getting set, I can say I have a third person with a basement by Mike. Beautiful finishing work. I can still remember, he was a great friend, and I still remember him standing right there. And like Pastor Frank said, not only would he raise his hands, but also pray. He would strum and raise his hands at the same time.
Let me kind of hop onto that.
Yes.
Praise team. He would stop playing and raise his hands, and we would go, "What are you doing?" "I'm praising God," he said. I said, "Well, we need those notes." He was always praising, and a barrel of fun, a barrel of fun.
One last thing I want to share before we sing. You have the words here in the pews here. It's just Amazing Grace. But I texted him the last time in December. I was impressed to text him, and he made a nice response, as he always did. He was so thorough and so considerate, and he wrote a nice response to me, and he finished it by this, which I want to pass on to you today. At the very end, he said, "Let everyone know that I think of them often and appreciate their prayers." So that was my last message from him, and I give it to you as well. So let's sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe thus far, and grace will lead us home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known as days to sing God's praise. And when we first begun.
Let's bow our heads for the benediction. Father in heaven, we entrust your son Mike to you, knowing that you will take care of him well. And we thank you for his life. We thank you for the blessing that he has been and the works he has left behind, the influence, the love that he has shared that continues to bless us even to this moment. Father, I pray your abundant comfort and presence and blessing and healing as you've done with Mike, that you'll do it with the rest of his family, to Christine and all of his family here, all of his friends, the church family that have been touched by his life in so many different ways. We come to you, Lord, with our grief and just ask you, Lord, to take care of us. That the memories of Mike will sustain us into the future, Lord, that we will have that hope, that you will wipe away every tear. There will be a day, Lord, where we will no longer have funerals. They will be obsolete. And we will see Mike again. Not as we saw him before, Lord, but rejuvenated and new and impossibly healthy and strong. And we cannot wait for that day. Help us to live our lives well as he did. Give us strength to take care of one another. Help us to use the gifts, our gifted hands, or whatever gifts you've given us to bless and create good things. And help us, Lord, to be in your love as you were with Mike. We entrust them again to you, Lord, and this time, and all of us here, connecting online as well, into your hands, your Son Jesus, who said he is the resurrection and the life. Amen.
I'd like to thank you guys for leading us in that beautiful hymn. It always brings back beautiful memories. In closing, actually, first I need to point something out. As you all know, Mike was a painter. On the table here, you will see this beautiful can painted by my sister, Joan. We are very artistic in our family, most of us. That is Mike's urn. We decided that there was no better type of urn to have for a painter. It will be downstairs so you can see the beautiful pictures on it. The picture on the front is from the view from my cousin Paula's place that Mike loved to go up there. He loved to ride his bike up there. He loved being in nature at her house. So you'll be able to see that more closely downstairs. It's absolutely beautiful. So in closing, as I said earlier, our family was fractured and scattered with little contact for years. Slowly, we made our way back together. I had the honor of staying with Mike last fall after he had a health scare and spent some time in the hospital and needed someone to help him afterwards. We spent so many hours talking over coffee, and if you know Mike, you know he loved his coffee. We drank a lot. We sat outside. We had the most beautiful fall weather. We spent hours talking over coffee and meals while catching up and learning about each other. Most importantly, we did a lot of healing. So what I'd like to say in parting is this. It's never too late. Mend those fences, accept and offer apologies. Give grace to others, talk and heal. Heal yourself, heal your families, and heal old friendships. Mike would love it if we all did that. We are now going to play a couple songs for reflection. I'd love you to sit and listen and enjoy them. Think about your favorite memories of Mike. The first song has been a favorite of mine since the very first time it was released as a simple recording on YouTube. It's called Dancing in the Sky by Danny and Lizzie. We do have copyrights to play that song through the live stream. The second is called Carried to the Table by Leland.
As I said earlier, Mike struggled with his faith a lot. He never felt deserving, and I couldn't understand why, because as you all said, Mike loved, and he loved deeply, and he loved with all his heart and soul, and he would do anything for anybody. So after the songs are over, please join us downstairs for a reception. There's lots of goodies to eat, some coffee, tea, drinks for all of us. There are some donation envelopes if you wish to make a donation towards Princess Margaret Cancer Center. They took such a good care of Mike through everything. So on that note, if you could play our songs. As I said, first is Dancing in the Sky by Danny and Lizzie.
Tell me, what does it look like in heaven? Is it peaceful? Is it free like they say? Does the sun shine bright forever? Have your fears and your pain gone away? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky. I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. And I hope the angels know what they have. I'll bet it's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. So tell me, what do you do up in heaven? All your days filled with love and light. Is there music? Is there art and invention? Tell me, are you happy? Are you more alive? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky. And I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. And I hope the angels know what they have. I'll bet it's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. I hope you're dancing in the sky. And I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. And I hope the angels know what they have. I'll bet it's so nice up in heaven since you arrived.